Okay. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Facebook. How are you doing? Good evening, everyone. Let me just check if I'm actually live. I'm sure I'm live. Okay. Okay. Tonight, I wanted to talk about how to apply for naturalization as a British citizen. So let me just check. Let me just check on my Abby. Hi, Abby. Always present. Okay. Okay, where was I? One second, one second, one second. Oh, no, you don't want to hear that. That's me on my phone. Okay. So tonight I wanted to talk about how to apply for naturalization, and this applies to those who have already had indefinite leave to remain, and those who are EA citizens and a who have held permanent resident status. So those are the two people who will benefit from this live training. I'm saying live training. Well, information that I'm about to give you. Okay. So recently, I've had few inquiries on how to apply for naturalization, and as you know, the system policy, the procedure has changed so that I think starting yesterday, you have to do the application online. Unfortunately, there is no form to complete. I mean, I haven't actually checked if there was a form, but when I logged online and searched for how to apply for naturalization, there wasn't any form. It says, apply online. So I did that, and the information that that they required is pretty much the same as the the one on the paper form application form that you complete. So all the questions that they had on the paper form is the same as in the online application, and this will benefit you for especially if you are going to be applying soon. Okay, you can do it yourself. It's quite a straightforward application. As I say, it's straightforward because you can do these applications. Okay, it takes a little bit of time when you're completing the form, especially if you don't have the information. So make sure you have them, and the information that you need are obviously your passport details. Okay, so your name, your address, your passport, your how long have you been in the UK, when did you come in. So you need to have your old passports with you and your new passport when you're completing the application form, because it will require information such as when did you arrive, at what terminal did you arrive, and also it asks for absences. Okay, this is important, the absences from the UK. So if you've made trips from the UK from the date since you arrived here, so if you arrived, let's say in 2011, you need to make sure from 2011 up to the date of your application, you need to write down all those absences, list of countries you visited, when did you leave the UK, when did you come back, and obviously it asks about how, it doesn't ask about how many days now. I think it just kind of calculates it once you enter the date. So you need those. You also need details about what you're doing. So if you are applying for um, sorry, I've lost my thread. I've lost my thread now. It's been a long day today. Um, you need to include all your employment details. That's what I was going to say. So if you've changed job for the last so if you've been in the UK, let's say 10 years, okay, and you've recently just had your indefinite leave to remain, and you want to apply for indefinite leave to remain, I mean apply for naturalization, then you need to go back 10 years and tell the home office about the jobs, the employer, your employment history. So you need to include if you can remember. Okay, I mean, who would remember what they've done 10 years ago if you haven't kept records? Because these days you you know, even companies after 6 years, they don't keep records. So if you have kept record, then you include them. Otherwise, you know, you have to include whatever you can remember, really. But it asks for 10 years of employment. It asks for what you're going to, it asks for what your job was, who were your employer, when did you start, when did you leave your previous employment. I mean, who remembers that? I mean, I certainly won't remember. Probably remember, you know, roughly the year, even the years. Sometimes it's difficult to remember. But you need those. You also need your parents' details, okay, and the mandatory requirements, which are English language test and the life in the UK test. And then you will need to provide your, if you're working, pay slips, if you know, pay slip, employment contract, and letter from employer. You can supply, but most importantly, you need to provide proof of your residence in the UK. But you can supply that in the form of your old passports, because it will show, you know, your travel records and your other previous visas as well. Okay. What else can I say about naturalization? Then the other consideration that you need to also make is your, whether or not you have good character. Okay, so this is, I think this is, although you can comply with all the paper-based ones, you know, the information that they need from you, the absences, the employment details, your sorry, previous addresses as well. They ask that, you know, if you haven't lived in your address for 5 years, and they ask for the previous ones. So if you've moved constantly, you need to also insert and add those details. So apart from those information that you need to give, you also need to consider whether or not you would fall under the grounds for refusal. So it may be things like you, because this, there is a test of a good character. Okay, so if you have let's say criminal record, and if you've absconded, okay, in the past. So let's say you overstayed, I don't know, like 10 years ago, or let's say 8 years ago you overstayed, and then, you know, they asked you to report and you haven't reported. Then there is hi Louis, hi. There is a you know, a definition of what's a good character. So you need to make sure that you do not fall under the you know, those under the category of not having a good character. Okay, so if you had, for example, debts that you haven't paid, and you have court judgment, you have maybe, I don't know, a traffic record. Hello Louis. Traffic offenses. I mean, these are not really serious, but you need to disclose them. If you don't disclose them, they check. Okay, so with the naturalization application, it's very, very strict, and so you need to make sure you disclose everything that you're supposed to disclose, all those things that you remember. And if it's something that you just want to forget, but you know that you should disclose it. Okay, so and just be aware that although you think and you consider it as something really, really serious, and you think, well, I'm never going to get a British citizenship because I have this criminal record, I have this, you know, I was arrested many years ago, I was an illegal immigrant for, you know, so many years ago. These things, you still need to disclose them. Okay, I'm giving you another example. I think I mentioned this before in my previous Facebook lives. There was a client who made an application for naturalization, and she had quite busy life. I would say busy because, you know, so many things happened in her life. So she first, I think she, you know, had problem with her husband, and they had, I think, county court judgment for rent arrears. Okay, so were renting a property, and I think they weren't able to pay the rent, or they probably just left. and the landlord took them to court, and they had a registered court judgment where it says, you know, they had to pay this amount of money. So they had that. Okay, so I'm counting this. They had that. Then she said, you know, I had a something like I was arrested for shoplifting, and so she also disclosed that. Okay, so I said, well, we need to disclose everything, because, you know, there's no point not disclosing something. Then, you know, I because it is really serious if you don't disclose something and they find out that you should have disclosed it, then, you know, it's quite serious. So she had shoplifting, and then very recently, when we applied for the naturalization application, she also had another problem with the landlord. I think the landlord then previous landlord also chased her for the debt. And again, it's a debt that her and her husband had, because it was in the joint names. So there was again court proceedings on that, and a court order saying, you know, they had to pay. So that she had like I think 3 or 4. I can't remember exactly the other one, maybe quite minor. But the home office got back to her and said, you know, can you please provide more details about this? And in terms of the debt, did you pay it? So they wanted to find out. So although you have a court judgment record, the Home Office will be interested to know, have you made any payment? Have you arranged with the person that you owe money to, in terms of paying it in the future, or have you just left it? So they wanted more information. And I think the mistake that she had was that she was not interested to even contact the landlord, or the person who had uh, the landlord who benefit from the debt. And so the Home Office actually wrote to her twice. So they didn't have to do that. They could just, assess and say, well, this is, there's not much information. The first time that she wrote them a letter, obviously explaining that, it's her debt and it's her husband, and it's her husband's debt, not really her debt, but because it was in joint name, then obviously she's liable for paying it as well jointly. And she explained that. But when the Home Office wrote again to ask, what have you done to pay this debt? Have you entered into some kind of agreement? And she could have contacted the landlord, or the company that's acting for the landlord, to say, okay, I have this debt, although it's not really her debt because it's jointly with her husband, but because her husband was not, she was not talking to him and they're separated. So she was not interested to deal with that. And so she lost. As you know, if you're refused, you will lose all the fees. You're not going to get it back. So it's 1,330. So that's quite a lot. She could have, contacted the company and say, look, yeah, I'll be happy to enter into some kind of agreement where I pay you this amount of money every month, just to show to the Home Office that she's actually willing to, to cooperate and willing to pay for that debt. So that's the example I was, I wanted to give you, so that even though you think that there's something, you have a criminal record, maybe it's, a minor, but if it's a big, if it's a serious offense, then that needs to be, you need to check whether or not they can actually allow you to have the British citizenship instead of, applying and things. So seek advice if your application is not straightforward, meaning you have criminal records, you won't fall under the good character qualification. Then go and check with, consult with a lawyer and ask whether if there would be a chance of you not getting a British citizenship, because it's a lot of money you're going to lose if you just apply thinking that you're going to be granted. Okay. So okay, yes, yes. So that's that is mainly the application for naturalization. There really is not much to it. But in terms of if you when can you apply? So When can you apply is if you've held the indefinite leave to remain for a year, at least a year. Then after a year, then you can apply for naturalization. And for EEA citizens, if they've held, it's not so much that they have the permanent residence status certificate, the blue card that you have if you are an EEA citizen watching. Then if it's not so much that, it's not so much when it's issued, it's so much it is the it is actually the date that you acquired. So it's about the acquisition of permanent resident status. So acquisition means if you've been in the country for 5 years working, or as a qualified person, meaning you're a worker, you're a student, you're self-employed, and so on. Then if you've had that for 5 years, but you applied on the 7th year, let's say on the 7th year you applied, so clearly you have already had your permanent resident status, so something like 2 years ago. So although you applied on the 7th year, that means you already have acquired your permanent status. And so when you receive your certificate, you don't have to wait a year before you can apply for naturalization, to naturalize as British citizen. And so you can immediately, once you receive your document back, you can immediately send your application for passports. Okay, and I had that with a few of my clients who were EEA citizens and who have acquired permanent resident status, a couple of years before they received their certificate, before they made the application, from the Home Office. So that's when you apply. And so yes, okay. Hi Melanie, you back? Okay. Let me just check. I'll check here. Melanie, yes, you. Sorry, I'm just answering Melanie's question on the comments. Melanie, it's entirely up to you. 11 months is quite a long time. You can, and but most, I'm saying most likely, I can be wrong, but it may be that they've been looking for you, and so when you report, it's possible that you may be detained, okay, because they won't trust you. They will consider you as not trustworthy to report back. If they say, if you suddenly report, then they will either detain you and but then they have to ask you questions anyway, why you were detained, and supply a proof of address where you're living. Okay, so you need to be able to do that, but that is entirely your call whether or not you want to report and take the risk of being detained. But definitely they will look into your record and they will know that you haven't reported for 11 months. Okay. Yes, I know it's difficult. It's something that you need to answer for you, but no one can tell you what to do, because you have to go and do it yourself. So you can go, as long as you know what the possibility is, then you can prepare. Okay, so if you turn up, there is a great possibility that you may get detained, and so if you're prepared for that, then then do it. Otherwise, it's entirely up to you. Okay, otherwise phone them and say you're prepared to leave the UK. Okay. Okay, guys. So any questions about naturalization? Just write them in the comments section, and I will answer them. No problem, Melanie. So I will answer them. Let me just check my notes and see if there's anything that I have missed out. I'm just going to share my screen. Oh no, wait a second. Share my screen. Okay. Ooh, I'm not supposed to. So where is my Google Drive? Okay, where was that? Ah, here it is. Okay, another one. There was a word one that I wanted to hear. It is. Okay, so yep. Okay. Oh dear. All right. Okay, so the information that you need to have, before you complete the application form online. Now it's online now, so make sure you have all the information before you start. I mean, you can save it and then go back to it, but it just takes much longer. So you need addresses in the last 10 years, okay, where you've lived, um, your employment history as well, and then your absences in the last 5 years, and then you need two referees. Also, yeah, the referees definitely you need, and one of them has to be British and over 25 years, and one professional, and both must have known you for at least 3 years, and they signed a declaration to say, they've known you for the last 3 years. And the other requirement is life in the UK test and English language test, and the good character reference, obviously. Okay, so yes, so that's it. So that's it, really, guys. I have I can't see your comment here. Okay, hi Carol. Yes, yeah, you're welcome. Okay, so that's naturalization, how to become British. And I'm going to switch off because I have I have somebody waiting for me. I have to make a phone call. Okay, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll think of a topic to talk to you about tomorrow. Maybe settlement, okay, and changes on the detention policy. Okay, hopefully that will be beneficial for you, for those who are watching and who are overstayers. Okay, have a good, okay, I'm going to stop share. Have a good evening. It's 8 o'clock. Okay, speak to you soon. Okay, bye. Bye, bye, bye.